Live from the Talking Joe studios. It's Talking Joe.
Talking Joe is on the air.
Hey, big spender. Why don't you spend a little money at the Cobra Casino? And while you're there, why don't you get your brain washed? It's me, Mark, host of Talking Joe, the leading dedicated Cobra-themed casino podcast. If you are new to the show, you can find out all of the details over at the website. talkingjoe.co.uk is that website. Now, today we will be looking at G.I Joe, A Real American Hero, issue 296, which was released the 3rd of August, 2022. It is the first part of an all-new, all-different arc called All In, and this arc is definitely not just a continuation of the last issue. Joining me, as always, to talk about it, it's A Real American Card Counter. It's Tim Finn.
Hello, listeners, and hello, Mark, and hello to this stack of chips in front of me, representing my winnings at the metaphorical casino, which is just a figment of my imagination.
For the American listeners out there, Tim has got a big plate of French fries in front of him. I thought a good subtitle for this arc might be "Arrive, Serpent Or, Arrive." 'Cause we've been waiting a while.
That's great.
Okay, there's been a few bits of news dropping in the last week, so I thought maybe we could cover some of those before we get to the meat of the discussion. So, comic book news.
Hot and pathetic.
A chance for me to use my news jingle a second time. Sheer pathetic. So out there in the world of social media, we've learned a few things. So Diana Davis shared a few example images of most of the upcoming issues, like through to, I think, 299. So we know, for example, that Andrew Lee Griffith and Nitho Diaz are going to be working on future issues, maybe to give SL Gallant a bit of respite leading up to the big issue 300. Did you see those, Tim, or did you try and avert your eyes so as not to have them spoiled?
I think I scrolled past them and noted, like, oh, that's Andrew Lee Griffith. That is definitely not Shannon Gallant. Okay, and I don't remember what they were, so they don't represent spoilers to me. So I saw them and then continued to scroll. Like, noted.
My main observation is that I think we're going to continue to being sort of Cobra Island, Cobra Casino specific in location for the next few issues. So we're not going to suddenly have the next issue set in space or whatever. I think we're gonna be seeing this storyline continue to progress and be the focus. A lot of the covers continue to drop. So I think out there in internet land, we've seen pretty much all of the covers up to 299. So that's quite exciting to see. Again, Tim, do you try and steer clear of the cover reveals, or is that spoiler free enough that you can enjoy those?
I'm not going out of my way to look for them, but they do show up in my feed, in my Facebook feed. Sometimes I will click on one and sort of take it in, but 2/3 of all Joe covers are just sort of exciting pinups or action scenes. They're not spoilers, and I'm okay seeing them, but I'm not seeking them out. But yes. I also, I'm ordering them for my store, so
of course, yeah.
I do see them in like Diamond previews, or I do see them on the Diamond website or the Penguin Random House website for comic book stores ahead of time, I should say.
There was also I think the first hint of an issue 300 cover. I think we know one of the Jamie Sullivan issues. I think it's the fifth part of the Cobra joined up cover, but set of 5. But he also gave a little tease as to a G.I. Joe centric cover as well for issue 300. So I think we're going to see a big G.I. Joe lineup from Jamie Sullivan. And I've been in discussion with Jamie, so hopefully he will be joining the show to talk to us about all things Joe and his various covers sometime before too very long. So that'll be fun.
What other bits of news have broken in the last week or two that you want to cover?
Well, just at the time of recording, yesterday was Saturday of FarleyCon in Chattanooga, and there may have been a little bit of a reveal from Larry Hama at his panel, where he said that he was working on issue 301.
But not for IDW, he said, or we assume, right? The news here is not that IDW had some reprieve or surprise renewed their license. The news here would be there is a new publisher.
And they have secured Larry to continue the ongoing exploits of a real American hero, picking up with issue 301. But until we see it carved in stone from that new publisher, let's, I think, sort of take it all with a tiny grain of salt, because whether they call it issue 301, when it will be released, whether it will actually pick up, from the events of issue 300, or will it be almost entirely a kind of new starting point? All of these things will remain to be seen. So exciting that Larry is continuing, but yeah, lots still to find out.
Is one of your news items from the last week or two an interview with the actor Andrew Koji at EW.com, Entertainment Weekly's website? Because I could cover that.
Go for it, Tim. I wasn't going to mention that one, but yeah, shoot for the stars.
So this interview dates back almost 2 weeks, so this may not be new news, but Andrew Koji portrayed Storm Shadow in the Snake Eyes movie last summer, and he is currently in Bullet Train, this movie starring Brad Pitt, and he's also the lead of this streaming series Warrior, which is in its second season now. It was on Cinemax, now it's on HBO Max, I believe. And so the interview is not about the Snake Eyes movie, but it does come up twice. And the interviewer asks him about being an actor, and he talks about actors having different sort of categories, like introversion and extroversion. He says, personally, the best actors can do a bit of both. And he talks about trying to sort of plan or like ride the career. And he says, I sometimes think I was drawn to this for the art and the love and passion. And then the other side of this whole game is, if you want to skyrocket your career, you have to play all these games and this social media stuff. Some people love it. I don't know if that's me. That's why sometimes I question, am I in the right job? I'm starting to see the balance between the business side and the art side. That was the thing with Snake Eyes. We were kind of going, who's making the decisions here? What film are we making? Are we making a film for the fans? Because if it's for the fans, surely we should do this and this and that. I think sometimes some of the producers are not making decisions that are based on integrity or the character's integrity or the story integrity. They're making it based just on money. It's turned this industry and this whole streaming thing into this cog machine. I think maybe the films we grew up with were a bit more special. I'm sure there was still a bunch of trash there at the time, I'm sure, but I think it still feels a bit out of whack. And then the follow-up question is, what was that a benefit of doing Snake Eyes, learning more about the inner workings of this industry? And Koji says, what I hear is that it's important to get on your feature film thing as soon as possible. As soon as you get the thing, you do that, because then you're on some sort of list or you've got some pre-studio deal or something like that. So that was part of it. I did actually like Robert Schwenke, the director. He's definitely more of an actor's director than a franchise or IP one. And I guess it did lead to Bullet Train, which then also led to a film I did with John Malkovich. And then I got the independent film I did after that. So somewhere when someone posted this on Facebook, I don't know if they were making the assumption, or I'm not seeing it in this interview, or there's some other interview I'm not seeing. But the idea was also this actor is very unlikely to return to this character. And, if we're sort of pessimistic about the Snake Eyes movie, we all knew or assumed there would be no sequel. And if there was, it would have different characters, it'd be a reboot. So, of course, the actor Andrew Koji isn't returning to this role. But, until a studio specifically says we are recasting or we are starting over again, that's actually not a guarantee. Because if Koji is contractually obligated to be in, 1 or 2 or 3 more of these movies, and Skydance and Paramount make another G.I. Joe movie, then, regardless of box office and critical attention to the Snake Eyes movie, Mr. Koji might have to be in a sequel. But yes, there won't be a sequel and he won't be in it. Back to you, Mark.
Yeah, and I guess sort of what's very obvious from that quote is that he, as an insider, is there sort of questioning some of the decisions as they're being made. Like, this maybe doesn't feel like it's being, honoring the franchise, or is maybe the best route. What is the motivation here? Is it sort of they're just trying to go completely, mainstream rather than honoring the story, the characters.
We as fans might feel a little bit of whiplash because 2 years ago and a year ago, before and leading up to the movie, we were seeing press from the people making the movie saying, this is great, we worked really hard, you're going to love it. And as sometimes happens with unsuccessful movies or franchise movies, after the movie is out, plus some amount of time, people involved in the movie maybe say different things. Like, oh yeah, we knew it wasn't good. Or, oh, it was really hard because we weren't sure what we were doing. Or, yeah, I'm glad I made that, but I also wouldn't want to do it again. And that's both upsetting because you think, wait a minute, weren't these people saying like, it's great, go see it, no matter what, go see it a year ago. But also you think, yeah, I had a feeling maybe the people making such a movie weren't having a good time or were questioning some of the decisions. So I'm not crazy.
Total Film Magazine have got a regular monthly feature where it's called Hindsight Corner, I think it's called, where there's the quote from someone promoting the film just as it's coming out versus them a couple of years later when they're a little bit more free of helping to drive healthy box office and being able to be a little bit more honest about what they actually thought. So yeah, definitely a part of that. Cool. So with all of that news caught up, let's talk about issue 296.
Comic talk, oh, comic talk. Larry Hama writes them, Tim and Mark discuss them, whoa. Comic talk, oh, comic talk. Larry Hama writes them, Tim and Mark discuss them, whoa.
So this is coming from writer Larry Hama, artist S.L. Gallant, inks Maria Keane, colours Jay Brown, letters Neil Yutake, editor Riley Farmer, group editor Tom Waltz, and research specialist Diana Davis.
Let's have a look at the covers in the gallery.
I'm going to talk about covers A and B and RI, and I want to toss to you for that retailer exclusive. So cover A is drawn by Shannon Gallant, and it is colored by Jay Brown. And there's a blue background, and Sean, as Throwdown, as Snake Eyes, is throwing a knife, a dagger, kind of at us. And we, this is a POV image, right? We, the camera, the viewer, the reader, are Laura, the Crimson Guards person. And coming in from the bottom left corner in the extreme foreground are two hands holding a pistol that is firing and shaking back in recoil. In the reflection of the knife coming at us is us, Laura's shocked expression, gasping that this knife is being thrown at her. The pose on Snake Eyes is great. He's got his Uzi. His other arm is swung around to let loose this short bladed weapon, and between the two characters, us and Snake Eyes, is a craps table. And then on the bottom, in this Art Deco font, it says "All in!" exclamation mark. Part 1. I like this cover. I wanted to compare this a little bit to my comments from the previous cover, where Gallant and Brown drew and colored Serpent Or in portrait, just head and a little bit of shoulders, holding one tiny prop. And my comment there was that I really like Gallant's storytelling and acting and fight choreography. He draws well. As a comics artist, as a G.I Joe comics artist, he's great. And last month I said, I'm not sure if he's a cover artist, because I feel like a different artist could do this portrait of Serpent Or and add something to it. It was missing some flair, some oomph, some pizzazz. And so here's an image which is immediately more exciting because there's action. As a storytelling composition, this cover is great, right? Like that we can see Laura, that we can see ourselves in this reflection. That's great. In terms of sort of how it all comes together, I'm reminded a little bit of this comment that Gallant's strength is less in the most exciting and evocative covers and more in the sort of ins and outs of panel to panel, page to page storytelling. And I have a couple comparisons. So part of my reaction to this cover is that even though this knife is being thrown at us, it doesn't feel like the knife is going super fast. And there are speed lines as sort of a burst of surprise and reaction and recognition in the cover, but they're around the bullet firing, the yellow flash that's under the logo. And you can't see these surprise lines very well because they've been colored as sort of light blue, and they kind of blend in with the medium hazy blue of the background. And as a comparison, let me point you to G.I Joe issue 42, the Marvel run. Mike Zeck and Dennis Janke cover from, 85. It's the cover where Storm Shadow is got his arms up, he's holding a sword, and he's about to bring it down on a mystery silhouette head with a white question mark in it in the foreground. And that's not a cover with a lunging, hurling movement like this new one, 296, but there is a lot of tension in how Zeck draws and puts shadows on Storm Shadow. And all of those lines act both as sort of a flash, the reflection of light off of the sword, and also the snap, the bam, the lightning crackle of, oh my goodness, this guy's got a sword and he's in this pose, right? So like 42 is all potential energy, 296 is all kinetic energy, but they're doing a very similar thing. And I don't know that it's as simple as, I wish Gallant had put a bunch of speed lines behind or around the knife, and a bunch of speed lines might make it hard to see all the fun details in the green part of the craps table. But I do think a slightly different drawing approach, maybe not compositional approach, to this cover would give it the oomph that I think it is like telling me that it has, rather than that I'm feeling that it has. Small, awesome detail. There are 2 dice that have been thrown. I'm not quite sure from where, if Snake Eyes has thrown them at us or if Laura was throwing them along with firing her gun. Doesn't really matter. It's not and there's no third person who's, but we do see Snake Eyes on this pair of dice that are in midair. So good cover, almost a great cover. The other thing I wanted to say about this cover, where I think it's slightly at odds with itself, is comic book covers can just focus on characters and not worry about background. So the one I just referred to, Mike Zeck, G.I Joe 42, no background. I don't look at 42 and think, this is missing something. Where are they? And similarly, let's go back a few months. G.I Joe 38, yellow background, Destro is pointing his pistol at Storm Shadow, who's in the foreground. It's an over-the-shoulder shot, even though I know we're lower than Storm Shadow's shoulder. Yellow background. I don't know where we are. Inside, outside, dungeon, forest, hallway. I don't know. Doesn't matter. That cover is just about the dramatic showdown, the tension between these two characters. Shocking in that it's two villains facing off, and how exciting it is that this violence is about to erupt because both have weapons. Pistol, wrist missiles, sword, right? And there's even a nice, in 38, balance where there's a glare on Destro's helmet and a glare on Storm Shadow's sword. Okay, so here are two covers where I'm not concerned about background. Shannon Gallant has done something like 296 before, where there are two characters, no background, but a big middle ground prop. In this case, the craps table, and I'm thinking of 203. 203, it's got Zorana and Dr. Mindbender, and there's this dentist's chair with the attendant light and the attendant tray. And I've never loved the cover. 203, I should love the cover to 203 because it's hilarious. There's this big oversized prop, the giant novelty teeth that Zorana's bashing Mindbender with. It also refers to Mindbender's old job. He was a dentist. He experimented on himself, right? I should love this cover, but there's no background, which sort of confuses me. It's like, where are they? I know you think, like, well, of course they're in a dentist's office, but 203 feels like it's not fully developed. And again, as one more a bit of contrast, Shannon Gallant's cover to 202, where Zartan and the Baroness are clashing with swords and knives in a spiral staircase in a, let's say, dungeon or stone castle. So there's a case where Gallant puts two characters with a background, and the background isn't like a distraction from the two characters. It's completing the idea. It's completing the circuit. So I come back to 296, and I don't know that I need like a busy casino behind Snake Eyes, but there is something about that blue, and then on the bottom right of the cover, on the sliver at the edge, the blue becomes black. It's like suddenly the nothing, everything behind him, wall, question mark space, becomes like floor. It's like, well, where would the craps table be? It's not up against a wall because Snake Eyes is there. So that's what I meant by it's a good cover that's almost a great cover, and it feels like 2/3 of a cover or 4/5 of a cover. That's my long thoughts on 296. Cover A. Cover B is drawn by Jamie Sullivan and colored by Raul Angulo and Audrey Sullivan. And all right, so this is the first chunk of a 4 or 5 part connecting cover where we're going to see every single Cobra character. And this one's really fun for several reasons. One, the poses are all varied. Zartan is leaning a little bit to his right, and the Sludge Viper in the front is leaning forward and to his left. We have the giant robot from, is it issue 3 in the back?
Issue 3, Trojan Gambit.
So again, great variety of poses. There's a Frag Viper all the way in the back who's got his fragging arm up. Not like he's lobbing, but like, you know, the way that if you're in the back of a group photo, you might put your hand up like, hey. And then on the right side, there were 2 Hiss drivers who were talking to each other. Great body language. One's leaning with his arm up on the front. It's like he's propping his elbow on the front edge of the Hiss, and the other's got his hand out, you know, like, hey, a bit of body language. Okay, here's the thing that I really like. There's 2 things that I really like about this cover. One, really nice coloring. Flat coloring, not gradients. There are hard edges, but any one color next to any other color is a small jump in terms of a little bit lighter or a little bit darker. I guess there's a tiny bit of a gradient on one of the lampreys in the back center, the sun hitting his helmet. Anyway, great sense of light, great sense of color in this cover. Nothing is muddy, nothing's hazy. 2, the other thing I like about this cover, where there are soldiers who represent a legion, like a Viper, it's not an individual. It's not like Major Blood or Naugahyde. There are 2 lampreys, there are 2 Hiss drivers, There are 3 lampreys. There are 2 hydro vipers. There's 3 secto vipers, 2 toxo vipers, and 2 toxo vipers too. And so Sullivan is not so subtly reminding us that this isn't just a ragtag team of 100 guys, Cobra, that this is thousands and tens of thousands. And as a cover, as a multi-part cover, this doesn't feel like a weird slice of it or a composition that's compromised where someone's kind of front and center, but we also get someone's leg, and then on the next cover, we'd get the rest of them. It's just a bunch of guys and gals.
Yeah, what you will see as we go on is that each one of these 5 covers is part of a wider piece, but it's also a part unto itself in terms of the characters being focused on will have a distinct theme. So we've got the focus on this one is Zartan and the Dreadnoks, and beyond that, then there's also like a satisfying background, which is its own part as well. And so this one is a Terradrome and a Hiss tank in the background. So it's designed as a part of a wider piece, but also specifically to work on its own as well, and it does it to good effect.
2 small criticisms and 1 plea. Criticism number 1, the line weight on the Terradrome, all the lines are thick, and even though it's knocked back a little bit in color, it's not solid black, it's black with some blue mixed in, so there's atmospheric perspective. It reads as behind everyone. I think this was drawn sort of at the same size as everyone and then comped in and sort of blown up for scale. And the thick lines of the Terradrome don't work for me behind the thin lines of the robot.
There's a little bit of a funny thing going on there with I think it's a Firebat pilot that's on like the balcony of the Terradrome. Can you kind of just about make that out?
Under the N and under the H are Hero, Real American Hero.
Yeah.
It's
just a little bit too small, and then sort of obviously the line weight is sort of out of whack with everything.
Yeah, inconsistent. My other small criticism is that the guns on the turret of that Hiss on the right side. Please cut out the blue stripe of the G.I Joe logo type. Let those 2 guns just come up above in front of the blue. Please don't cut someone's hand off or arm off at their wrist. And my plea is whether it's Jamie Sullivan making a deal with IDW and or Hasbro, or IDW making a deal with Hasbro, like prints and posters of this, and not some little thing at a convention where a smart artist can sell 100. This poster should be at stores. Like, people would love this.
Mm-hmm. I'm sure Jamie will be making a print available in some form, as he has with his other sort multi-part covers. Hopefully we'll talk to him a little bit about it in the future. But I believe that the technique used here was that he would draw each character individually and then digitally sort of paste it together to form the full lineup. And he gave fans the opportunity to have their pick of characters that they could then actually buy the single character from this lineup. I don't know if he's got any still left over.
It becomes sort of like a G.I Joe Order of Battle.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
where everyone gets drawn, and that art has made it out, and you might own your favorite character. Cover RI for retailer incentive. Comic book stores in the direct market, for every 10 copies total in any combination of A and or B, are allowed to also order 1 of cover RI. It's drawn by John Royal and Jagdish Kumar and colored by James O'Frady. It's awesome. So we're in the desert, and I know that from a little bit of ground and rock on the bottom that's beige and yellowish and desiccated, and behind them the sky or the distant out of focus, let's say, sand dunes, is all, beige and whitish. And rushing at us are Dusty, Outback, and on the ground, maybe not rushing, but offering support, bunched in with them is Lowlight. Coming at them are 1, 2, 3, 4 bats, and 2 of them are in the extreme foreground, one at the top left and one in the bottom right. 2 are in the distance on the left side. Oh, excuse me, 3, because there's one in the negative space between
There's an extra one, yeah.
Outback's thighs, right? Which is a nice use of. This is a great composition, right? We are immediately pulled in. It's dynamic, it's tense, right? And sort of without overloading it, there are 2 satisfying explosions. There are some smaller sort of flashes where bullets are hitting rock, or in the case of Lowlight, his weapon is being fired. The fun sort of like fan pat on the head part of this cover is that one bat is using its flamethrower hand attachment. One bat is using its claw attachment. I'm trying to find if we can directly see if a bat is using its...
Flame, bottom left.
Okay, flames bottom left. And then... All right, so going back to the toy, what's the 4th one? What's the one that's not a hand, not a claw, and not a flame? It looks like the thing that my dentist
claw,
puts
flame,
on my...
laser, I'd say.
The one that looks like a weird, like, three plastic cups stacked?
Yeah.
That's a laser?
I don't know. That's what I interpret it as.
Okay, right now, 75 listeners who know the toys really well are upset at us for not knowing this. But anyway.
I've always assumed it was a laser.
Well, I was assuming... Okay, anyway. So I think the thing in the bottom center of the cover is that. But to me, the package art is the other attachment. That's the flamethrower. I think Royal has drawn what I think of as the laser, or the like boring device, the like diamond polishing device. Anyway, doesn't matter. Cover is awesome. Okay, the colors are so gorgeous on this cover. There's a really great sense of highlighting on Dusty's right hand, on his right cheek, on the left side, his right brim of his helmet, the left side of his goggles, right? That yellow highlight versus the blue aqua one on the other side. Look at this triangle of light on Dusty's left wrist and forearm. That little bit of his left wrist and cuff that's somewhat blocked by his weapon, right? And then it continues down onto this leg that's on the bottom right of the cover, right? And that same light is also hitting Lowlight on his forearm, his shoulder, his nose. It's so great. And then the 2 bats who are in the foreground, they're knocked out in a bluish brown that's got some reddish warmth in it. There's a wonderful arrangement in this cover of light, dark, light, dark, light, dark. And there's a wonderful arrangement in this cover of lots of color, like eye-popping color in the 3 guys in the center, and then 2 like cherries on top, the like explosion behind Dusty and the flame, the orange flame on the bottom. And then like much less busy, like sort of beige, whitish sky background. And then the like dark, you almost don't see it because you're looking past it, sort of knocked out blue, brown, red of these bats on the top left and bottom right. This cover, if G.I. Joe was a book about 3 guys, like this could be the cover to a new issue number 1. It is that exciting and that well done. And if you swapped out Dusty, Outback, and Lowlight for Stalker, Scarlet, and Snake Eyes, or Duke, right? It's like this could be a G.I. Joe number 1 cover. If you want to put only 3 guys, not 5 or 6 or 10. I like this so much. I wish this team drew the interiors for some extra issues or backup stories.
And I suspect that actually this composition with Outback and Lowlight in particular came about probably from a suggestion or commission for superfan Russ Sheath, given that those are two of his very favourite characters, and that he is somewhat friendly with John Royle.
Well,
Yeah, either commission or probably put the idea in his head.
one last little comment.
One and a follow up to our earlier discussion. Just while you were talking, I was doing a bit of googling. The greatest consensus seems to be that those three cups stacked on each other is a laser hand. I've also seen people describe it as gun hand, which I don't think is accurate. And another one was energy weapon hand. So, the greatest consensus does seem to be laser, though.
It's always reminded me of the tool that a dentist puts fluoride on and then polishes my teeth with twice a year. My final little comment, Royal draws a slightly exaggerated cobra bat in the sort of slim, kinetic, acrobatic sort of J. Scott Campbell mode. Cobra bats in the cartoon are a little bit of like, they're very heavy and they're lumbering. And in the comic book, I don't know that we've landed on a definitive portrayal. These remind me a little bit of how like Phil Gosier was drawing, was it those outer space bats on the asteroid in the Star Brigade story around issue
140s.
148. And I say that because in this retailer incentive cover for 296, the top left bat, where its sort of chin is jutting forward and its head is stretching forward a bit off of this neck, and then under that chin, there's this claw, a different bat that's flying toward Outback, and that claw is much more stretched out and angular than the toy claw. And so there is animation in the John Royal, J. Scott Campbell approach to drawing G.I. Joe comics characters. What do you think of the Dave Johnson online exclusive cover, Mark?
It's the middle part, and it does look more like a middle part. It's the focus is Dawn sort of leaping towards Laura with Mindbender, so it's satisfying that it ties into the interior of the book. But as a cover on its own, I think it's sort of weakened by having Roadblock's gun pointing in from the left, someone's foot, which I assume is Snake Eyes, and sort of losing the right half of Mindbender as well. It still looks nice because it's Dave Johnson, but I think it's slightly weaker for being the middle part of three covers as a cover in itself.
So I don't know if the version that I don't have the object in front of me. I'm looking at an image of it. Is all of the blue on the bottom and the top in the printed version, is that a logo and type, or is this a virgin cover with no logo?
I don't have an image of the printed one in front of me, but I would expect that it's virgin, like the image that's shown on the inside front cover.
Okay, because part of what would help balance this middle part as its own freestanding cover is if there was a logo on all that blue on the top and some copy on the blue at the bottom.
Yeah,
I think
agree.
we look
it's
at
got the space for it, hasn't it? It's been designed with a logo in mind there.
Yeah, because there's so much, there's negative space, the sky behind the people, and then the negative space of this blue designy thing, which ends up being Cobra Commander's cape, right? Yeah, this is, I said this before about previous connecting covers. I do like this image. If you had said to Dave Johnson, just do a single cover with Dawn and Laura and Dr. Mindbender and maybe a gun and a foot coming in and a splash of blue at the top and bottom, I feel like there'd be characters coming toward us and a very different arrangement of characters and negative space. So it's a funny compromise you get for making a horizontalish cover pinup poster thing and then chopping it into equal pieces. But Dave Johnson can almost do no wrong for me. Such a strong artist and designer, and his contributions to G.I Joe are rare. So, anytime publisher brings him back, bring him back.
Cool. So let's have a look at what happens on the inside of this book with a plot breakdown. In China, the year 1227, Genghis Khan, the greatest military leader the world has ever known, passes on. This Mongol is no more. He has ceased to be. He's expired and gone to meet his maker. He's a stiff, bereft of life. He rests in peace. His metabolic processes are now history. He's kicked the bucket. He's shuffled off his mortal coil, run down the curtain and joined the bleeding choir invisible. This is an ex-warlord. Later, in the Cobra Casino on Cobra Island, the Joes are inside Dr. Mindbender's lab taking fire from a squad of Vipers led by Laura. The Joe team of Scarlet, Jinx, Throwdown, Helix and Dawn take cover behind Dr. Mindbender's equipment before facing a Cobra squad in close quarter combat. Meanwhile, the backup team of Rock and Roll, Gung Ho and Roadblock make their way inside to support, making their way through a set of Cobra Casino bats with extreme prejudice. In Utah, at the pit, Duke loads up the C130 and launches a relief mission to evac the team. Will the Joes on the island be able to hold out for the 3 hours it will take for the backup to arrive? Back at the casino, Laura orders another push, and a stray bullet shatters the Bacta tank, freeing Genghis Khan from Mindbender's tank. As he steps out, Mindbender gasps, "He's alive!" Genghis Khan walks the earth again. Okay, Tim, we've been trying to keep things positive when we start off, so I'll go in with my top level, which is keeping things positive at the same time. There is lots of action in this book. There's building jeopardy as the Cobra forces encroach on our Joes, and there is some absolutely great dialogue in this issue. And I will say that when I was reading this issue, I was doing so with a big grin on my face.
My initial positive statement is that Larry Hama is an avid reader and is interested in learning and politics and geography and history and religion and philosophy. Smart guy, wants to stay smart. And I imagine writing this opening scene was fun or interesting for Hama because he got to either do a little digging or present some information to readers that he has found interesting in a way that, a lot of G.I. Joe stories aren't history lessons. Here's a little bit of a history lesson. And yes, I agree with you. Snappy dialogue. This issue, well-paced, exciting, and moves along. Lots of good action. And feels like this issue had urgency that maybe 2 issues ago or 2 issues ago, 3 issues ago together didn't have. And this issue does feel like something big is coming. I don't mean Serpent Or Genghis Khan. I mean 300 or a big fight, or maybe not the biggest fight, but a fight with consequences. I don't mean someone's going to die. I mean a big, exciting fight, the likes of which we've only seen a few times in the series. And I'm thinking specifically of page 14, where at Joe headquarters, Duke rattles off some code names of characters and is leading 2 teams, or a team divided into people and vehicle drivers with vehicles, and 2 planes take off. And I thought, oh, this scene feels like issue 50, or maybe it's 49, which builds up to issue 50. This page feels like the Cobra Civil War. This page feels like, I think it's chapter 4 of Snake Hunt. I don't quite remember, where all the Joes and vehicles are, getting ready. And that's a thing that has happened only, it doesn't happen all the time in G.I. Joe comics. Oftentimes we've got a little team somewhere that's sort of already somewhere starting their mission, and we're sort of coming in 20% of the way. 3 Joes are in the forest in South America with binoculars looking at something.
I'll point to another example as well. The earlier on in the IDW run, where there's that issue where Grunt is taken hostage and the Joes ship out to Sierra Gordo.
Yes.
Similar one, loading up the C130 with a team in.
Part of why I think we like these scenes. I think the other way of saying it, like, oh, this is like issue 50. This is like the Cobra Civil War. A scene like this builds anticipation, and this is not a fully formed thought. So I might realize this doesn't work. But I think in some of his writing, Hama builds anticipation in different ways because he's making it up as he goes along. And so sometimes a story is already a story that he's bringing us to has already started. Here are 4 Joes in the woods in South America on a hill with binoculars. Or, here's a Joe eating at the cafeteria, and it's a new Joe, and we haven't seen them before. So I think about X-Men crossovers. Every year or two, several different X-Men titles will have for 2 or 3 or 4 months. You have to read them all. You have to read them in order. And on the cover, it says part 1 of 12, part 2 of 12. And oftentimes those first 1 or 2 chapters are setting the chess pieces on the chessboard. And because there's so much overlapping of A, B, and C stories in G.I. Joe, I think we don't often see, like, actually with urgency, someone like Hawk or Duke saying, like, okay, we're running, everyone, like, get on this plane that I already had ready to go. And so that page 14 of this was very exciting to me.
You were talking about the Genghis Khan opener. So it was 5 pages, of which 2 pages were a very rare splash page, showing us that Genghis Khan was a historical figure who died. And I thought to myself at the time, 5 precious pages telling us something that we already knew. I'm not 100% sure how I feel about that sequence. I think stepping back, it sort of makes for a breather and sort of a change of color, and as you say, a chance for Larry to do something a little bit different, and educate the listeners to a period of history as well. We all, growing up reading G.I. Joe, found out things that we never knew before about historical figures and so on, the likes of Julius Caesar inventing the pizza and all that kind of thing. So in the moment, thinking, oh no, we're counting down to issue 300. We've only got so many pages. Let's make everyone count. And 5 of those are eaten up by showing us that Genghis Khan, once upon a time, died. Felt a little bit frustrating in the moment, but I can appreciate why it is there. And with the news that G.I. Joe will not be ending, that Larry will be continuing to write this thing, I think that mentally that makes me feel a little bit less stressed about these next few issues as well. I don't know whether you might be in that same space.
I think of it this way. I don't imagine Genghis Khan will be in issue 301.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to your worry that this is precious real estate given over to A, something we know, and B, a character who doesn't have a big connection to G.I. Joe, I think we're only going to live with Genghis Khan in G.I. Joe for 4 more issues. But it's such an unusual scene. Yes, I was surprised that it went so long. And yes, on paper, like, don't, make this 3 pages, make this 1 page. 300's coming. We're out of time. It's so unusual. I'm willing to go with this. And because Hama has already had 2 scenes where Mindbender is exploring or talking about where Khan was buried and found, I wouldn't say this was necessary, but I thought this was helpful because it turns out that Serpentor coming back was a misdirect. It wasn't Serpentor, it's Genghis Khan. They're not making a composite clone, they're just cloning, which for Cobra, lest we forget, is easy because they did it with Mindbender. And also they did it with Serpentor, and that was much harder. 10 people, not one. And well, this flashback to Genghis Khan isn't him having lots of successes, which might sort of more nicely lead into him alive again, and then we can be worried for the Joes. I think there's something here in the theme of death and rebirth that Snake Eyes' personality inside Dawn's head. Throwdown is Snake Eyes, isn't Snake Eyes. And then Mindbender is cloning someone. That if we witness Genghis Khan's death, then when he comes back, it has more punch in the moment and resonance for the theme in these final issues.
Yeah, and it also, I guess, you know, as you're reading these issues, and every issue could be someone's first, it's re-establishing for the audience this character that breaks out of the tube at the end.
Yeah.
It gives some weight to that. You know, this is Genghis Khan. This was the world's greatest military leader, and we've, you know, found out about that over the course of 5 pages of the beginning of the issue. So when at the very end of the issue he's back, it sort of gives you a little bit more heft to
Also,
that.
I'm not about to compare G.I. Joe to From Hell and Larry Hama to Alan Moore. But in From Hell, Alan Moore does all of this research, and he and Eddie Campbell do all of this exploration of who was Jack the Ripper. And the book does point to someone. The book has an idea, or makes a guess, makes a claim. And we don't precisely know. I think after the book, a couple years ago, some evidence in Liverpool suggested someone with some certainty. I don't know that full story, but interesting here, we don't know a lot about Genghis Khan's death. We as sort of people in 2020, and Hama here is depicting it. He has written the scene where, at history.com, it explains that Khan was over 60, in failing health, and may have succumbed to injuries incurred during a fall from a horse in the previous year. Now, Hama has, I'm going to guess, read a couple articles or books recently or over time, and has much more information than that. I don't think Hama was like, I should show a scene with Genghis Khan in a flashback, and spends 3 minutes Googling it and reads the same one sentence I just did. I don't think that's what Hama did. But he is either crunching together a couple different sources, picking the one that seems the most reasonable, or making up something based on some stuff that he read. And as you just said, I think there is more weight for this final page splash in this issue because we have just seen this guy, A, at some height of his conquering career, and also B, dying. And even if you don't like this guy, you don't know this guy, you can't help but be a tiny bit affected by seeing someone fall off their horse and die. And then their spirit comes out of their body and sees their corpse and then goes to an afterlife. And so that panel, the bottom of page 5, that does link up to once or twice later in the book where Khan is in his tube looking at Scarlet, and she twice notices. And then this final page where he's back.
Yeah, let's now that you've raised it, let's talk about that Scarlet scene. I was almost tempted to cover this in Error Detected.
Because she does it once and then she does it again?
Exactly, yeah. There's one scene where Scarlet says, I swear that thing in the tube is watching Sean. Ulp. And then just a bit later, I swear that thing in the tube just turned its head to look up at me. So it's doing the same thing twice and using almost the same language. I feel like just maybe another editorial pass could have improved that, or, have her say something different. It just feels redundant.
I felt the same way. Okay, once is notable, 3 times is a pattern, twice is a sofa bed. It's neither a sofa nor a bed. And sometimes when my students are like showing a film or a film in process, and it's like someone wakes up, they go downstairs, they open the fridge, they get a snack, they go to bed, they can't sleep, they go downstairs, they open the fridge, they get a snack, they can't go to sleep, and then like a satellite lands with aliens. I'm like, no, rule of threes. Have them go down to the fridge 3 times. It's like when you tell a joke, it's like, and then this guy walks into a bar, then he walks into another bar. You don't stop then, right? The guy walks into a third bar. So I think this one's a third one where Scarlett would say, now I know I'm not crazy.
Right.
Because I saw him do it again. Or like he put up his arm, or he flipped the bird, or he's frowning at me, or whatever. He's rubbing his hands together. He's knocking on the inside. Okay. And yes, you are correct. The dialogue is awfully similar for the first one and the second one. I think also in storytelling, a slightly different drawing, one additional panel so that like the second incident has maybe like an additional beat, where she's looking at us and then she turns her head and it's from the same angle. But yes, I do agree with you that it wasn't as effective or funny or spooky as I think it's intended. But I wouldn't call it a mistake, but it does read as not as punchy as it wants to be.
Something I was going to note on in this issue was about the sit rep on the inside front cover.
Mm-hmm. It's different.
And we've seen it slightly before. So I think, what tends to happen with these things is that, Larry makes it up as he goes along. He doesn't do like a plot hypnosis, is that a word?
Synopsis.
Synopsis. Thank you, Tim. He doesn't do a plot synopsis and then sort of doggedly stick to it, for the purposes of the solicits. So it tends to be, I think, editorial, get a rough idea of where Larry's, going to go with things if he's not yet written it, and then kind of lay out something that's vague enough in the solicits, sort of indicating what might be happening in the issue, but it's not going to be doggedly held to. So I think this is almost like the solicit text, and it's clear that maybe that this is where they thought the story was going to go, but it hasn't gotten there or hasn't gotten there yet. So Tim, do you think maybe you could read out what's in that front cover, and we can
in my best Jack. So here I am mixing the comic and the cartoon in my best Jackson Beck. All in Part 1, the final G.I Joe, a Real American Hero story arc at IDW Publishing starts here. Using a brand new casino on Cobra Island as a front, Cobra has been busy behind the scenes attempting to resurrect dangerous villains and heroes alike, all in the hopes of creating the deadliest Cobra army ever. It'll be up to the warriors of G.I Joe to foil their archenemy's evil machinations before it's too late. The fight for the fate of the world is barreling to a calamitous conclusion, and it's time for every single player to go all in.
Yeah, so the big element there is that Cobra is attempting to resurrect dangerous villains and heroes alike in the hopes of creating the deadliest Cobra army ever, which hasn't happened.
So Mindbender has referred to that. He wants to make a lot of Snake Eyeses.
Mm.
But also it sounds like, that sounds a little bit like Snake Hunt. It's like, oh, is every Joe going to be in this? Or is that the hyperbole of comics plot summaries? It's like, if you only read one X-Men story this year, this must be it. It's like, lo, and there shall become a reckoning. It's like the Thing is like having tea with Alicia Masters on the cover or something. And there's like a shadow. It's like, oh, it's not the biggest Thing story ever. I was going to say the reason why this copy felt different to me is that it refers to IDW. It refers to the fact that the series is ending at IDW, which is just a small point of view formatting thing. But, it's in the letters page where editor Tom Waltz says, look, wow, readers, wasn't that an exciting story? Lethal Larry Hama sure is bringing his A game, right? And in the sit rep, that's like third person omniscient, but not emotional. Like Snake Eyes and Duke are trapped in jail. Scarlett's looking for them. As opposed to, IDW is proud to present its 63rd story. Anyway, just a small thing. Okay, what really stood out for me in this issue is what I'm going to call a first question mark and a not quite first, but an unusual. I know not to call anything a first in G.I. Joe because when I do, you correct me later on. Like 20 issues ago, I said, "Is this the first time we've had thought balloons in G.I. Joe?" And you said, "Maybe." And then the next episode, you said, "No, we've had them 7.5 times before, and here they are." So I think a first on page 5 is this is the first ghost or spirit we have seen in a Larry Hama G.I. Joe comic. And my asterisk to that is Granny Demon, in the aftermath of Snake Eyes' death and Dawn becoming Snake Eyes, has referred to Snake Eyes' sort of spirit, or like the sort of the demon possession of his like passionate like fighting, like wanting to, I think it was in around issue 250 or 247 or so, but like when Snake Eyes was in the zone because Storm Shadow put him there, or do you remember this? Or Dawn is like taking on Snake Eyes' fighting skills, but I'm trying to remember. I don't think an artist drew a translucent upper torso. And here we have, and Jay Brown adds glowing light and medium blue colors and replaces all the black lines with blue lines. I think this is the first ghost we've seen in G.I. Joe comic books. Not in the cartoon, right? There is an episode where Cobra actually makes 3 ghosts fight for it. Good episode. But so this is unusual. And even with issues 49 and 50, and then Serpent Or coming back around 212, 215, 217. So that's unusual. And then on top of that, this opening scene, this 5-page flashback to 1227, has narration in a way that Hama almost never does. Where the history lesson, right? Panel 2, page 1. The great Khan of the Mongols has conquered more territory than Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar combined, but he's still not finished. And it continues with his dialogue on page 3. And then there is this narration on page 5. And it's not a lot of narration, particularly if you're comparing it to, like Stan Lee comics in the 80s or 60s. Chris Claremont comics in the 80s. But for G.I. Joe, this is a lot. Usually someone on panel would be saying this, 4 Joes are in the woods in South America, and like Stalker is saying, like, for the benefit of the reader, like, okay, repeater, now that lift ticket has dropped us off here, we just need to sit tight until we see so-and-so down in that base, and then we'll do so-and-so. And then someone's like, right, Stalker, I'm here with my so-and-so weapon, and I can lob a grenade so-and-so, right?
Yeah,
or
we
like,
don't get that that kind of removed, unknown narrator in the style of, and I'm going to go for a highbrow reference here, Desperate Housewives. Yes, but the Khan of Khans was beyond help.
And, like a slightly different, and this is not a criticism. I just find this really interesting and different for G.I. Joe, particularly at the end of a long run. And I don't know if Hama thought, I normally don't do narration, I feel I need to, or if he like just did it and then realized it or didn't after it. But I do feel like if he was to do this like 15 times in a row without like we reset the timeline and he does it 15 times, I feel like 13 of the other ones, like Mindbender would be explaining this to Cobra Commander or Laura, or Mainframe would be explaining this to Duke. It's like, oh, we just got some intel from Scarlet that they're trying to clone Genghis Khan, right? And then like Duke and Mainframe are like, give us the history lesson, as opposed to effectively Larry Hama giving us the history lesson. And so, and I know that Hama doesn't like to write narration captions. And you see that in his work. Usually his captions look like this: Sierra Gordo, 0600 hours.
Yeah.
And then a couple pages later, back in Sierra Gordo, ... So that was striking to me. I also realized after reading this issue and thinking about it that for all of my confusion and light grumbling in the last couple of episodes with you, why is Serpentor coming back? That's not necessary. And it can be interesting, but I don't know if it's going to be interesting. Nope. It's not Serpentor. It's Genghis Khan. And the sort of misdirect, or Hama figuring it out as he goes along, even continues onto the cover of next issue, which was drawn some time ago. And, you know, covers in comics like don't want to spoil things because they have to be in catalogs, you know, 2 or 3 months ahead of time. So the cover to next month is Scarlet reacting to someone in this green cloning tube, and the person seems to be awake and aware, but the person is bald and hairless. It's not the Genghis Khan of this issue who's got hair and a beard and a mustache. And so when I saw this preview cover for what's going to be next issue some time ago, I thought it was, you know, a good image, but also like, I guess it's Serpentor. Because, you know, wouldn't Serpentor come out of the tank, you know, smooth?
Yeah, indeed. And, you know, was this cover just drawn before the whole Genghis Khan with the hair and the beard? Was it, you know, with the thought that it might be someone else in the tube? Hard to know without asking Shannon directly. And yeah, given that we know that often these covers have to be prepared long in advance of the interiors and knowing what happens on the inside, my conjecture would be that it was the best stab of, you know, we know that there's going to be these tubes. We know that that Scarlet's on this mission. Let's leave it as a bit of a mystery, and maybe something like that might happen on the inside. Maybe it won't, but you know, it could be just an interesting cover / misdirect / anything at this point. If I sort of just put a pin in your thought about the afterlife point as well, I'll just note that I think the most similar thing that we see happening in terms of alluding to an afterlife is probably the Dr. Venom scenes where his sort of his robot brain is sort of closing down. I think he dies twice in the IDW series, I think, and both times they're kind of hinting at a kind of afterlife. And there's quite a memorable scene where he's, you know, being haunted by the sort of a vision of Quinn pulled into the afterlife. So it's not entirely a sort of a completely sort of ground that's been completely left untouched, but yeah, that idea of a spectre kind of leaving the body. And
on paper, I should not like that, but I'm just going to remind myself here. It's like, no, many years ago, a ninja in this comic slowed his heartbeat so that he looked like he was dead. And I don't know a lot about ninja or, you know, Navy SEALs, but I don't think you can do that. And maybe Larry Hama did a bunch of research on ninja. Maybe he's just writing a comic that's, you know, 17 parts action adventure, 1 part fantasy, 1 part sci-fi. I have a short list here of things that I like about this issue.
Okay.
Shall I tick them off?
Go on.
Okay. Roadblock does a roadblock thing in this issue. And I like Roadblock doing Roadblock things. Roadblock is really big, and almost halfway into the issue, Roadblock kicks a door down. Specifically after Gung Ho says, I found the door to the utility corridor, but it's locked. And then Roadblock not only kicks down the door, he kicks it down while he's holding his heavy machine gun. And that panel reminds me of Ron Wagner's cover to the 1987 Marvel G.I Joe Special Missions trade paperback, which reprinted the backup to issue 50 and Special Missions 1, 2, 3, 4. Ron Wagner and I think Bob McLeod did a new cover. There's a lot of black in it. Lady J and Roadblock are knocking down a door and about to come through. And this is not an homage. I'm sure this is not at all a reference to that, but it ends up kind of looking like it. That gets me excited. And then continuing Roadblock doing Roadblock things, after he kicks down a door because he's big and strong.
Wait, let's come up with a roadblock rhyme for kicking down a door.
Out of the way, Gung Ho, so I can knock down that door. Unless these revamped robots want a little more of my Browning 50 caliber. So then on the same page that he's kicking down the door, he does a second Roadblock thing, which is he uses his giant machine gun to mow down these robots who've been established several times as really tough to kill. And then several pages later, with these trio of Joes, Rock and Roll, Gung Ho, Roadblock, he does it again, where Gung Ho says, need to get that 50 cal barking again. The 556 and the 772 are barely chipping paint on them bats. Brap. And Roadblock says, I'm fixing that right up. And then turn the page and he mows down a bunch of these tough to kill armored robots. So twice in one issue, Roadblock does the thing, that we want him to do. It's like in G.I Joe Retaliation, when Dwayne Johnson and Duke have their little bet at the beginning, and Dwayne Johnson picks up this crazy gun and shoots the whole wooden post and wins the bet. It's like, okay, that scene kind of makes me roll my eyes, but it's like, okay, check. You had Roadblock do a Roadblock thing.
Excellent. And did you notice that each time those bots are blown away, their little eyeglass flap is flying off in the air as well?
Mm-hmm. I wonder if that is Shannon Gallant adding a little closure to this idea that they are not armored where their eyes are. And so visually depicting their eye 3D glasses fold up thing as separated, dots that I and crosses that T.
Yeah.
Another little thing that I liked in the issue is Gung Ho does appear to speak with his Cajun accent. I wasn't entirely sure, right? I found the door to the utility corridor, but it's locked. All right, I don't see anything there. Go forward a couple more pages. I think it's that just bloop some 40 micronite grief on the one sneaking up behind us. Like, okay, but need to get that 50 cal barking again. The 556 and 772 are barely chipping paint on them bats. And I'm aware of two things here. One, the device in comic books that someone with an accent, their dialogue can or should be written out phonetically. I'm thinking of Chris Claremont, X-Men and New Mutants comics with Cannonball and Rogue, who are from the South. And, like Darlin without a G, or I'm, right? Rogue says I'm, like I am, but it's A-H-apostrophe-M, like am. Southern accent.
Sugar with an H.
Sugar, right. And I think that's okay, right? I love it in Dave Sims' Cerebus when he draws his Mick Jagger and Keith Richards parodies and phonetically spells out and letters out their really thick British, very specific to a place, British accents. But there are people in the world where if you did that, that would be offensive. So I think maybe we don't do this anymore. But the other thing that I'm aware of here in this scene with these scenes with with Gung Ho is that I remember in the Marvel run, he first shows up in issue 11, right, when they're in the Arctic, right? The pipeline.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And then he shows up again with Snake Eyes and Rock and Roll and Quinn and Dr. Venom in the New Orleans or somewhere, or San Francisco, can't remember. And I remember somewhere in there, issue 10, 30, 50, someone writes in and says, why doesn't Gung Ho have his accent anymore?
Yeah.
And I think the answer is we forgot, but Marvel Letters pages don't admit mistakes like that. And I sort of remember someone attempted a no prize, and it was something like, well, he's been with the Joes, he's sort of lost his accent. And I don't know if they got a no prize for that or not. And I don't remember other times Gung Ho has shown up since around issue 15 or 30 all the way to 296. I'm sure he was in Snake Hunt. I don't know if he spoke. But I'm pleased that there are two or so small nods to his accent, because like in the cartoon, he does not have an accent. He does not have a Cajun accent. In the cartoon, he does not talk like Gambit on the 1992 Fox X-Men
They saved that
cartoon.
for Copperhead, right?
Yeah. Well, Copperhead has an accent, but is Gung Ho in the comic book. Sorry, I should differentiate. With Gung Ho and Gambit, it's not just an accent; it's also a dialect. Like there are some different words. Whereas with Cannonball and Rogue, it is pronunciation. I, sugar. Anyway, so something that I noticed.
Cool. So at the beginning of this issue, we're sort of picking up from the last page of the previous issue, where Laura is with a group of vipers that catch the Joes unawares as they're coming out of the lab. The last page of the last issue, it seemed like Laura had them dead to rights, whereas we pick up back in the lab where they're mid-firefight. So, yeah, sort of hunkered down in defensive position. So there's a bit of time that has elapsed in between then. Do you feel like that's encroaching a kind of, hey, what happened there? That, they would all
Yes.
pretty much captured, or
Yes.
you give that a pass? No?
I thought, oh, good, the Joes aren't in as dire straits as I thought. I want them to win. And then I thought, but they were in dire straits. What's changed?
Yeah.
Like, oh, it's the biggest page turn of them all, the end of the issue, and a month later. I think you could wave that away with one line of dialogue, something like one of these vipers saying, like, Laura, we don't have as much ammo as we thought, or like, we shot one of the air conditioning vents and some coolant has blocked our view or something.
Yeah. Well, they got back into the lab, that kind of, yeah.
There's a lot of good dialogue and interplay here with Laura pressing her soldiers to move in different ways. Dr. Mindbender reacting negatively because he doesn't want his stuff to get shot. Scarlet reacting strategically. Laura says, Vipers, you heard Dr. Mindbender, and remember that we're taking Snake Eyes alive. And Scarlet says, Joes, you heard Mindbender, take cover behind Mindbender's fancy, expensive equipment that they're not supposed to shoot. Right. And that's AB. That's a panel on the panel right after it.
Yeah, I thought that was
and
brilliant.
they're both yelling. They both have their mouths open. They're both doing something with their hand. They're both doing something with their other hand. It is a small and nice sort of parallelism on page 7, I think, the top of the first two panels of page 7. Also, since I give the other G.I. Joe series from the 2000s that we talk about in our disavowed episodes a hard time sometimes for not depicting the introduction or a reminder of a visual element clearly, I want to point out something nice here in issue 296 on page 6 and 7. So we cut back to the shootout in Mindbender's lab, and in the first panel on page 6, Mindbender's arms are behind his back. You're not sure why. And the Viper he's with,
Jeffrey,
he's also leaning forward and his arms are back, and you're not sure why. They're cropped. And then the next panel, we don't see them in the next panel. Again, they're both sort of hunched forward in a way that suggests they have handcuffs or their hands are bound, but you can't actually see it. And then on the next page, page 7, in panel 3, it's not drawn big and it's not colored super contrasty, but you can see that there are shackles around Dr. Mindbender's wrists. So that is just a small example of, sure, if you're reading the trade paperback, you're reading this sort of in one sitting, you know that Mindbender is handcuffed. And to your joke before, every issue, even the fourth to last issue of a series that's been running for 12 years, is someone's first issue, and they might not have read the previous issue, and they might be thinking, why is Dr. Mindbender sitting in such a funny way, right? It's like, no. On the second page of this scene, Gallant does reestablish, so you can see it, that Mindbender's hands are tied.
talking about dialogue, there's one that I saw prompted a little bit of discussion on the boards, which was an incinerator talking to a toxo viper, and he says, "This CG officer Laura seems to know what she's doing, more so than Cobra Commander or Dr. Mindbender." So a little bit of a surprise from the Cobra ranks that their commanding officer actually seems to be, have a little bit, what's the right word? Seems to be, in control, know what they're doing, as opposed to their normal hapless leaders. What are your thoughts on that, Tim?
I was pleased that a lower Cobra soldier recognized it and said so, because I thought, Laura seems to be doing a good job here. Oh, the Cobras think so too. But also the comparison is unflattering. Cobra Commander
Totally.
loses a lot of his momentum and menace if he's, less than competent. And, like, what have we seen in the last 2 issues? He's like talking to tourists at his casino. But at the same time, it's like, well, he used to be a used car dealer. And, in those flashbacks in the Marvel series, when he's giving his speeches, when he starts wearing a mask, but he's not, a global terrorist yet. It's like, no, there would be a part of Cobra Commander's personality which is going to glad hand. But, I do think, what the series wants in the last, 30, 50 issues is a decisive win for Cobra that feels like Cobra Commander is a terrible person. And I don't mean injuring or killing a Joe. I mean in the way that, what is it issue 42 when Cobra Island is created and Cobra gets it? Like something like that. It doesn't have to be like issue 156 when Cobra takes the White House. I never really bought that. But, I do, if I could rewind 10 or 15 issues, Cobra Commander always seems overextended.
Yeah, it was a great beat, that issue, where the creation of Cobra Island, that the Cobras are thinking strategically. They're several steps ahead of the Joes, and ultimately they have a victory at the end of that issue where they've got Cobra Island, and the Joes have to kind of walk back with the tails between their legs. It was a great moment. Isn't there something like that in the Snake Eyes trilogy or ahead of it where the Joes can't actually go into the Cobra consulate building because it's like an embassy. It's like sovereign territory. Am I making this up? Hawk says, "Don't go there," or "You can't go there," or someone says, and then they go anyway.
There. Yeah, right. I mean, absolutely. I sort of wonder in the Hama taking side and supporting characters and elevating them. Billy, for example. I sort of wonder, like, instead of Laura turning her back on Cobra and letting Snake Eyes go free, she going to be in charge by 300? Hama has said he's not going to kill anyone in 300. I'm not sure that counts for Genghis Khan, but
that would be an interesting turn of events. Suppose we've been thinking that Laura's gonna defect to that she's got this sympathy for Snake Eyes and for the Joes, and we've been looking at them sort of laying the track really for her sort of making a turn and joining the Joes, or at least not wanting to capture and kill Snake Eyes. But what if that's all a kind of a misdirect, and she goes completely other way, and then ends up becoming the all different female Cobra Commander or something.
Now we have seen a female Cobra Commander at the very, very end of the IDW continuity, the G.I Joe comics that weren't written by Hama, after all of the sort of crossovers with Transformers. In the final 2 or 3 issues of the series that's called Scarlet's Strike Force, the Baroness becomes Cobra Commander, and they call her Cobra Commander. Also, that happened in Tom Scioli's Transformers and G.I. Joe, right? Transformers versus G.I. Joe, right? Isn't there like a woman Cobra Emperor at the end? Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'm ready for anything to happen with Laura. I also think it's possible if, depending on what Hama's sort of goal for the next series is, and the sort of editorial nudges he gets, you know, if it really is 301 and not new number one, Laura may be a conflicted CG in 301. And, you know, maybe she sort of fades out at 306, or maybe she does become a good guy by, you know, 309 or something. But if she turns out to be evil, I don't know that there's setup yet for that. But there does feel like a lot of setup for her to renounce Cobra and help the Joes. I had a thing that I thought was fascinating. I wanted to ask you about it. On page 12, in the first panel, the Night Creeper is using a machine gun that is also a crossbow.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, is that how you see the Night Creeper action figure's crossbow with 5 bows on it? Or is that just a cool thing that, like, Gallant threw in there?
I think this is just a cool thing, to be honest. Okay. I would never have interpreted that original Night Creeper's weapon as looking like that. But I think it's a cool touch.
Yeah, I turned the page and I said, whoa!
Yeah, it's neat. It's sort of, you know, it's the modern of the kind of the machine gun with the kind of the old and sort of Night Creeper aspects of having a crossbow. So yeah, in a firefight situation, clearly an automatic weapon is going to be better than just a standard old crossbow. But when you're sneaking about, you want a crossbow. And any gun or crossbow expert will probably tell you that it's not necessarily particularly realistic way of having either of those things working. But as a concept, it's quite cool.
I imagine there would be 2 different triggers, because you definitely wouldn't use the crossbow while you're also firing bullets.
Yeah.
On the opposing page, there's another little thing that just a nice touch in the storytelling, where we cut back to Joe headquarters, and Psych Out, Stalker, Duke, Mainframe are looking up at a screen, and Scarlet is calling in and saying, things are bad here, we need backup. And in the 2 panels where she's on the screen that they're looking at, and then also a close-up of the screen, she's talking into her sort of Joe pad, you know, her iPad tablet for communication, her video phone computer, and she's holding it out in front of her. And in both panels, her left arm, the arm on the right, is foreshortened at quote us, at the actual camera in this electronics device. Just a small little thing, just paying attention to body language, which I appreciate. And then in that final panel, you know, I don't love the coloring in this issue, and I'll just point out one example. The final panel of this page, where we're in the pit, Scarlet's on screen talking to these 4 Joes. You know, Duke is pointing in this final panel, and you know, his complexion is this sort of rotting purple Caucasian, and his hair is this, like, okay, sandy.
You did say rotting purple, right?
Yes. And his hair is, you know, it's a sandy, desaturated blonde. Okay. And then his shirt is, it's like you can't decide what it is. It's like, it's not his mustard yellow shirt. It looks sort of like, was it the figure that had the jetpack and the open mouth, where his shirt is like white, but a little green? Or am I thinking of a comic 2-pack from 5 years ago? So, you know, here his shirt is this sort of, it's like not the right color, but it's also got these really bright highlights on it, I guess. But if there's highlights from that computer screen with Scarlet, like, that's blue. So, and his teeth are like the brightest thing in the panel. And then, you know, then the gradient and the background is like, it's like a pickle, not in texture, but it's like a muddy, there's too much black in that green. There's a lot of, look around his hand. There's a lot of black in that green, and then there's less black in the green around his head. Anyway, but you know, incinerators showed up. And did you look into this? This can't be the first time we've seen incinerators.
So I did not go back and double check. I think it probably is. There's always a chance that they might have snuck in somewhere and I've forgotten about it.
I feel like
It's possible maybe during
were they
maybe
were they
during
in the were they in the pit when Snake Eyes and Serpent Or died? I feel like I've seen a
there's a
Shannon
chance.
Gallant
There's a
incinerator
chance. But
before.
there's also a chance it's the first appearance.
Well, I do think that they did not show up in 1991, 92 when Andrew Wildman was drawing the book. I do feel somewhat confident in saying that. But every time I make an absolute. First time, word a thought balloon, right? Not true. There's some good sword slashing and bloodying of various vipers from the ninjas
There is.
in this issue.
Yeah, most of the on-screen deaths occur through. So most of where guns are being shot, they tend to hit robots. Where people are being shown being badly wounded or killed, it is via a bladed weapon.
One more thing. This is half color and half drawing. As great a job as Gallant is doing on this issue with a tough deadline. Long Range's costume in those two panels where Long Range shows up. I never had Long Range. I sure wanted the Thunderclap, but his costume is a little underdrawn. It's missing one or two details, and it is colored. He's colored like Payload.
Yeah.
Like just a blue or aqua with some white. Like no. He's got gloves. Okay. He's got an armor chest thing or a vest. He's got pants. He's got boot leggings like the Baroness. Like thigh high, insulated. Those are gray. His pants are dark green. His shirt is sort of a leather neck green. Yeah.
True.
Like Muskrat, absolutely. Muskrat is two colors, sure. Just his aqua and his Caucasian, sure.
Hard top. So I think you were thinking of hard top.
Oh, when I said Payload, right?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. Payload is all white with a little bit of yellow or a little bit of orange, right? Hard top is the guy who comes, the second guy who comes with the Defiant.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Thank you. Hard top looks like he wandered in from a Fisher Price line.
Yeah.
It's like, construction guy. I work on a big tank thing that's got a space shuttle on it.
Yeah. And he's sort of like more of a baby blue than the green. That's sort of.
Yeah.
But,
and I will, in everyone's defense, artist and colorist and letterer, this is a hard book to do. Deadlines are never good. And there's an additional layer of approvals because it's a licensed book. So, Hasbro gets to see it and, say yes or no, or maybe, take a couple extra days to get back to them.
Let's talk about SFX, baby. Let's talk about pew and scree. Let's talk about shooting gun things and the sound effects. We'll see. Let's talk about SFX. Let's talk about SFX.
There's some nice, Neil Yotake continues to pick some nice fonts and font treatments for lettering when Dawn blows up the incinerator. The foosh is a fiery font, and the letters are offset. One's up, one's down, one's up, one's down. It's a foom. Foomh. Okay, it's not a foosh, excuse me. And then second to last page, when the tank crashes open and the green cloned soup splashes over Scarlet and Snake Eyes Throwdown, who are taking cover behind this glass cylinder of lemon lime Kool-Aid. Crack. The feathering on the bottoms and the tops of all these letters in crack is a very Marvel Silver Age treatment. Maybe also DC. I don't know my lettering history. I'm sorry. And anyway, but they're smaller on the sides, they're bigger in the middle, and they're curved. And then the same thing happens with sploosh, right? The O's in the middle get a little bigger, and there's a little bit of a bend to these. But great sort of like cartooning in the design and placement and treatment of these two sound effects. And then behind the glass.
the cut behind the glass as well, which just makes it much harder. That some effort involved in actually trying to achieve that effect. And I guess the shape and color of the lettering, making it evocative of the breaking glass on the crack and the splooshing Mountain Dew on
the liquidity, of the Mountain Dew.
The sploosh. Have you got through your tick list of things that you noticed and liked?
Yes.
One thing that slightly frustrated me was that the Joes were boxed into the lab with the utility corridor the only way in and out, whereas previously the plot went to great lengths to show us that the lab can be accessed via the kitchen, which is how Jinx got in there. So strange that the Joes have forgotten that they can get out that way, and strange that the Cobras have forgotten that they can get in that way. Perhaps they'll remember next issue.
Is there anything is there a reason why the Joes wouldn't want to back up into the kitchen?
I don't know. There was some there was some nasty looking kitchen bots that were in there.
Right.
The butcher bot.
I didn't like that once again. There is no letters page. Please, IDW. We're running out of time. Need a letters page. I have a little sense of community every month when one or two fellow fans write in and say something they like and make a request, and sometimes say something they don't like, and Larry says, I'll think about it, or this is why I did that. And then Tom Waltz says, Lila Larry Hama's writing a great story. Can't wait for next issue. I need this.
And presumably, right about now, they're probably assembling issue 300. So if you were to write in this month, I guess there's a fighting chance that you might have a letter published for issue 300.
I don't think they're going to have a letters page in 300. I think they're going to have a page for Waltz. I think Waltz is going to have a column. Hama will have a page. Gallant will have half a page. I think Jay Brown may have a column or half a page because he's been on this for so long. And then I think there'll be a paragraph at the end where Waltz wraps it up and says, thanks to everyone else who contributed to this series. And while we won't be continuing this story, keep your eyes peeled for news if you're a G.I Joe fan. I feel like there's going to be 2 pages of text that will replace the letters page. And in a final issue, I'm totally fine with that. Marvel did that in 155.
Yeah.
But there had also been letters pages in the previous months at the Marvel book. And hey, IDW, if this is only time, if this is, please, please.
Okay.
And this isn't selfish. It's not like I've been writing in letters and I want to see them in print. It's no, I've gotten some letters printed. I feel great. Thanks. With my time machine, I would mail the letter that I wrote to Postbox the Pit around issue 92, which I wrote but didn't mail. I don't think it would have gotten printed, but I've had 3 letters printed in G.I. Joe comics, so I feel this isn't selfish. This is selfish in the other way. I want to read letters by other people.
I spy with my little eye.
My first I Spy. I've only got 2 left after you spoiling my I Spies. One of them was
a ghost.
One of them was Genghis Khan, comparing him to the cartoon. I look back at the Genghis Khan appearance in the Arise Serpent Or Arise episode to see how his designs compared, because I thought the sort of the color scheme was somewhat cartoony because of the quite bright colors. And while the design is quite different, there are some components that have some similarities. So on his breastplate, there is a big sort of golden medallion, which is somewhat evocative of that design. And there's a lot of sort of red and purples going on. Possibly coincidentally, possibly intentionally. There, I think they might have looked back to the Genghis Khan of the cartoon to see if they could capture some of that.
My I Spy is on the cover. There's a little bit of text on the craps table. There are some numbers, both as numerals 4, 5, 8, 10, and as words 6 spelled out, 9 spelled out. I don't know how to play craps. I've never played craps. But on before all the numbers, it says "Don't Cobra Line," and I think in craps normally that would say "Pass Line." And I don't quite know what the reference or joke here is, but I think it's like, okay, sorry, I'm looking at a different part of craps table. There's a line, one says "Pass Line" and one says "Don't pass bar." So I think the joke here is like Cobra something, like don't Cobra line, don't pass line, don't go over line. Maybe Cobra line sort of rhymes with over. Don't Cobra line, don't go over line. Anyway, I 72% understand and appreciate this joke. But the font is really nice. Neil Yotake. That's a nice font. And Shannon Gallant definitely drew all of the white lines. And then Neil Yotake, or a letterer at IDW, probably Neil Yotake, definitely laid in that text. And I think it's him and not the artist, because like the title All In Part 1 for foreign translations, that's a layer you turn off in Photoshop. So a letterer in another country at another publisher could type it in their language. Anyway, don't Cobra line. That's my I Spy.
My last I Spy is the very final page, which has Genghis Cobra stepping out of a broken tank. It is very, very similar to the cover to issue 210, which features Serpent Or stepping out of a broken tank.
Oh yeah, which drawn by the same artist.
Drawn by the same artist. Yeah.
And colored by the same colorist.
Stop. Have a time.
Time to beat the soles of your boots with my face. Sucking chest wounds, red ninjas, brain scanners, rubber oozes, blue ninjas. And then some more sucking chest wounds. Hammer time.
We just have some of that real Hammer terminology coming into play. So we've got a reference to rules of engagement all over the place. We've got Dawn saying no plan survives the first 5 minutes of combat, which is something we are well aware of as seasoned G.I Joe readers. And we have got lots of reference to the caliber of the Joe's weapons as they are using them. So you quoted that already, Tim. Gung Ho talking about his 40 Mike and the 50 caliber and the 5.56 and 7.72 not chipping the bat's paint.
It's a Larry Hammer colloquialism. He's talking G.I. Joe and all its heroism. Can you guess what it is? Is it something new? Now listen as Larry drops a slice of real life on you.
I also had a colloquialism. Roadblock says, I feel the same about robots who violate the first law. So that being a reference to Isaac Asimov's first law of robotics. So the first law of robotics is that a robot may not injure a human being through it or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. The second law being a robot must obey the orders given to it by a human, except where orders would conflict with the first law, and the third law being that a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. So, the robot here is trying to harm a human, specifically the G.I. Joe team. Therefore, Roadblock is within his rights to blow them apart with his Marjuice.
Quote of the week, 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 quote of the week.
My favourite line of dialogue was this one. Scarlet says, so the doorway from the utility corridor that is now full of Cobra Vipers combat assaulting this lab is the only way in or out, which is actually referencing back to the kitchen that I was talking about before. Anyway, and this is the favorite bit. Dr. Mindbender says, "That would seem to be your problem, not mine." That's a you problem. Thanks, Dr. Mindbender. Tim, did you have a favorite line or?
Yeah, halfway through the issue, I've referred to this page where Duke is leading 7 Joes and some vehicles onto the C-130. They're running. He calls them out by name, and he says, "Wild Bill's cranking up the C-130, and I had our weapons and field gear loaded." I like that it's already ready to go. And on the previous page, he says to Scarlet, "You'll have to hold out for at least 3 hours." Right? "I'm launching a relief mission immediately." So there's a little bit of, okay, Cobra Island it's near Puerto Rico and Cuba, or it's in the Gulf of Mexico, right? And
Mexico, yeah.
Joe HQ is in Utah. And so how fast can a C-130 and a stealth fly from Utah to the Gulf of Mexico? So I like, I like that kind of connective tissue. One of my slight confusions and annoyances with the 1980s Transformers and G.I Joe cartoons as a kid was that I never really knew where anything was. There's an episode of Transformers where the Transformers seem to drive from like Washington State to Washington, D.C. in like a moment, like in one scene or like over an ad break. And I don't know where Joe headquarters is in the cartoon. Anyway, so I like this line. "I already had our gear loaded." Like, awesome, Duke. Awesome.
Very good.
Not my favorite line is not the joke about Ghost Rider. I do like that joke, but I liked Duke's planning ahead even more. So my sort of philosophical question for you, my character motivation question for you, is on page 6. After the Genghis Khan flashback, we cut back to the Joe and Laura and Viper standoff that we left off with in the previous issue. And Laura says, "We outnumber you and we have fire superiority. You are trapped and the outcome is inevitable." And then she says, Mark, "Lay down your weapons and we guarantee safe passage off the island." So I meant to bring this up. This is maybe the most interesting thing of the issue. And besides all the, DNA and flashbacks and Genghis Khan. And we sort of talked about this in a roundabout way already. Is Laura becoming a good guy, staying a bad guy, becoming a worse bad guy? Do you take her at her word here? Would she guarantee them safe passage off the island, or is she trying to trick them? Or would she want to provide safe passage, and then Cobra Commander or someone, or one of her Vipers would say, no, we're locking them up and we're going to execute them or ransom them?
Yeah, I don't think she's in a position to guarantee it, is she? So, and also one of her main objectives is to capture Snake Eyes so that he can be plugged in to a scanner. So I think she's being nefarious. You'd think.
Mm-hmm. I feel like in the moment of a firefight, there is no need for Scarlet to respond like, "We don't believe you," because they're just shooting. The Joes are trying to kill Vipers and get out and protect themselves. But I can imagine in a slightly different version of this scene, there would be a little room for some of this back and forth where Scarlet does respond. I'm also fine with Scarlet not responding because Laura is yelling and the Joes are yelling because there's all this machine gun fire. It's loud, right? This is not one of those this is not one of those modern comic books where there are no sound effects because sound effects are old fashioned and silly, and comics without sound effects are sophisticated and mature, like Watchmen and The Dark Knight Returns. And you have to sort of remind yourself that there's actual volume and noise in a scene. No, there are sound effects in this scene. We know it's loud. Blam, 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 blam. Brap.
I was just looking up, Tim, on Google, the distance from Utah to the Gulf of Mexico, and it's approximately 1,500 miles.
Are you also looking up the top speed of a C-130?
The top speed of a C-130 is 590 kilometers per hour. So the approximate time for a C-130 at top speed to get from Utah to the Gulf of Mexico Would be around about 3 hours.
I think Mr. Larry Hama was thinking of this months and months ago. Yeah. And, I can't think of any at the moment, but certainly there are incidences like this in the past 300 or so issues of G.I. Joe where there is a timetable and a distance to be covered. And someone's calling it out, like Barovia or something. It's like, well, this tank only has a half tank. This tank only has a half tank of gas. We're not going to make it to the train in time. The train is so and so far away. I wish Hasbro would release a Laura. What's her number? 303.
Oh, I can remember. Is it 347?
Okay,
something.
I just Laura. What's this issue number? 296. Laura's 296. I wish Hasbro would make a Laura Crimson Guards person action figure with. I guess you wouldn't do removable helmet. I guess you'd do replaceable head. But that you need a new sculpt for a different body type for the Crimson Guard. But there have been female Cobra soldiers, Cobra officers in the modern era. And has there been did they recolor Retaliation? Yeah, they recolored Retaliation Jinx and turned her into a kind of a new take on Vipra.
I think the closest parallel actually is that they've released a female Hiss Tank operative as part of the Hiss Tank Kickstarter.
Oh, right. Is she in red, like the classic Hiss Tank driver?
I am racking my brains. I think it was basically a red female version of the Hiss Tank.
Cool. Well, they've got the body type and the color right. So customizers, for now, it's up to you to turn that into Laura 296. I know she's not 296. Are you considering backing the Hiss Tank Kickstarter?
Yes,
for the
I did.
6-inch line?
As the clock was counting down, I was getting a fear of missing out. I was holding out, thinking, are they going to drop one more last exclusive in the final days? I have somewhat reluctantly backed it. But it does look amazing
because it's so darn big.
Yeah. Where am I going to put this thing?
Well, if I got rid of these 10 hardcovers and cleared this one shelf, I could put this giant tank.
I'm gonna have to get rid of some books off of my bookshelf.
All right, that's that's the issue.
Yeah. So, Yo Joeage.
6.
Yeah. Okay, I'll go 7. Yeah, lots of fun, good action, good dialogue. A couple of qualms, which might potentially be resolved as the story progresses. I had if we take just a couple of minutes, I did have a new feature which I wanted to test out on you, Tim, which is somewhat tied into the theme of the story at the moment. My new quiz is called Serpent Or.
I'm ready to be embarrassed.
Is it a serpent? Or is it something else? Is it something else? Well, if it's serpent, it's a really snaky serpent. Really snaky serpent.
What a jingle.
So the idea behind this is that I've got a list of serpents, snakes, names, and I've got a list of something else, and you have to decide whether it is a serpent or something else.
Okay.
So this week we have got some different adders and some different spiders, common spider species of Australia. So I will say something, and will it be an adder or will it be a spider? So let's go first up. Desert Death. Desert Death adder or Desert Death spider?
Adder.
Ding, adder. Tent. And
I
Ada
think instead
becomes-
of you saying ding, it should be a little clip from the cartoon of "This I command." Sorry, what was the second one?
Tent.
That's a spider.
Here's a spider. Okay. Common spitting.
Snake.
That is a
Adder.
spider.
Oh. From the movie. Farewell, worm. Best line in the movie.
Sombrero.
Spider.
Spider. It is a spider. Many-horned.
Spider.
That is an adder.
Thanks.
Dwarf sand.
With a W, wharf.
Dwarf.
Dwarf.
Dwarf sand. Adder. Dwarf sand. Spider.
Adder.
It is an adder. Ding, ding. Okay, last one. Pirate.
Spider.
It is a spider.
Oh, what was that? 7 out of 8? Do I get your classified hiss?
Is that the prize? Okay.
Ding, ding, ding.
Okay.
Maybe I should just get your used childhood Cobra Adder,
Well, I never
which
had
I never,
one.
which I never had.
No, I didn't either. Didn't get a regular release in the UK. So there we go. That was Serpent or something else.
Farewell, worm.
Cool.
I guess the Hearth. If I'd lost completely, if I'd gotten all 7 or 8 wrong, it would. Your life has ended.
Cool. So I think that might make a future return. As you join us next time on Talking Joe on the Arah episodes, we will be continuing to cover the issues as they come out. So 297, all in part 2, which is currently due 31st of August as the fortnightly-ish G.I Joe continues. I think this one has got a 3-week gap between issues. And of course, we will also be covering our historical look back on the Devil's Due era as we sort of come to the last few issues of the Brandon Jura run. Tim, where can people find you?
With my creative partners at atomicabe.com. Our YouTube channel is Atomic Abe Productions. My brick and mortar comic book store is Hub Comics in Somerville, Massachusetts. And my G.I Joe blog is arealamericanbook.com. And
you can find the show on the usual places. talkingjoe.co.uk is the website that has links to those places. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and more. We are also on Patreon. Big thanks to our backers, Richard, Sam, Jay, Bill, Christopher, Justin, and Rob, who are getting early access to episodes, as well as some exclusive content. And that is us done. But remember that...
Nobody beats Talking Joe, an international podcast.
Laters.